सजना सजना ओ सजना मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया पूरा हुआ मेरा सपना प्यार है सपना सजना ओ सजना मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया चाहूं तुझको सांझ सवेरे छोड़ ना देना मुझको सनम छोड़ ना देना मुझको सनम साथ निभाना अपना सजना ओ सजना मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया प्यार हमारा जीवन भर ये प्यार हमारा बन के रहेगा अपना सहारा टूट न पाए अब ये कसम टूट न पाए अब ये कसम प्यार न बदले अपना सजना ओ सजना मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया प्यार है दुनिया में प्यार है दुनिया में तू ना मिला तो मर जाऊंगी साथ रहे हम जन्म जन्म साथ रहे हम जन्म जन्म साथ न छूटे अपना सजना ओ सजना मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया 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 मैंने तुझसे प्यार किया
A very pleasant good afternoon and welcome to the Ken Rampersaud Show. on Island Zone Radio here in New York. I wonder how you guys are doing. You know, for for a long time I did not go on the radio, but today I'm going to try because I'm a little busy with a lot of things. Um, and today, to be very honest with you, it's raining a lot here in the States. Um, but nevertheless, I am able to get to do the things that I wanted to do. Um, my son Kevin was baptized, which is a good thing. Thank God for that. And I hope that he choose to live a good life. But what I want to talk about today is what I realize that in Guyana, that there's a lot of suicide recently, especially with teenagers. And so what I plan to do is to talk to Mr. Sookram, who is one of the authority when it comes to suicide and domestic violence and depression and these things. But the thing is that today's the first day I'm using this kind of this career Zoom. So let's see if I will be able to get him on the program. He should be on anytime now. So hope all is well with you, ladies and gentlemen. And please share the page so that people could get to hear some of our discussion, what we have to talk about when it comes to teenager and suicide, especially in our beloved Guyana. I'm trying to see who and who is watching here. So I could say hello to some of you. I see Joy Rambaran was watching. My beautiful wife, Geeta Rampersad, is watching too. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And please share the page so that other people could hear what we are talking about today. The devil is a little busy. My phone actually froze up. Nevertheless, I will be able to. I am not able to get you guys comment, but we will get there. You know. All right. So we got Joy Rambaran is watching, which is a good thing. All right. All right. So I see um, Mr. Mr. Narine is watching. So let me see how I could find him now. I hope that he could hear me. Um, yeah. So how are you guys doing really for the past couple months I was not on? And so many things are going on in the world, you know, a lot of things going on, especially in our beloved guy. And I see husband and wife dying by fire, and a lot of accidents happen. Um, so it's a sad time in the world. The new year really didn't isn't kind with us, you know. And there is I'm getting a delay here. I don't know why I'm getting a delay. I should not be getting any delay, and it caused me to slow down a little bit too. You know. All right. So let's see if we could bring on Mr. Narine Dutt, who is a doctor in Canada, who hails all the way from Guyana. So Narine Dutt, I'm trying to see um, where I could see you log on. Um, I know that you are well aware of this here. So let me know. You could probably write and tell me what's going on, how I could get you on. Okay. So I planned our third International Women's Day right here in New York, and I can't wait for this to happen. It's a time when we really acknowledge a lot of women what they're doing in our community, um, to let them know that we appreciate them. And we have some really good names. Um, so yes, Narine that is on, and I'm trying to see where he is on. Um, I don't see the accept button for him to come on, and we really need.
Um, I'm
Okay.
not sure if can you hear me at all?
Oh yes, I can hear you, Narine.
So I'm hoping, so usually there's a setting, and hopefully you will figure all of this out, but usually there's a setting where you can set it up where the two of us are side by side.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping you will be able to do that. But I'm in there, the two of us are here together. It's just a matter of you kind of taking some control on your end there. So I can see myself there. So what I'm there, people get to hear me and see me. The only thing is the setting. So you want to make sure there's a setting. If you go on your right hand side, there's gonna be something that says view with a little square box. You want to click on that box, and then you want to go select gallery. If you select speaker on your end, it means that people will only see the person who is speaking. And then we should be good.
Okay. So let me see. I see portrait, studio lights, restrictions.
So
If if
there should be some, we can still carry on with the show. It's not an issue.
right,
But
right, right.
there is a piece that says view. Once you hit view, there will be a drop-down box that gives option speaker and gallery and whatnot. So you want to choose gallery. So that way the two of us are
I
side
see
by side.
view. I see view.
So click on it. Yeah, click on it. And then you should have some option once you click on it.
Oh wow. You know what? Okay, I got it. Got it.
Yeah. So you just click on gallery, and that's gonna take us side by side.
Yes. So
Awesome.
Narine, that a very good evening to you. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
You not bad. You look sharp there with that tie and everything. So
I'm just getting prepared for my show coming up. But anyways, I'm doing good. Thanks
yes,
for asking. Lots of snow here, by the way,
oh wow.
in Ontario.
And it's a lot of rain here. So I know we have a short time on the program, and I want to tell you that I really appreciate you coming on today. So let's start. Of recently, I noticed there's a lot of there's an increase in suicide in Guyana, and I want to tell you mainly in Berbice. I am not too sure, but especially some young men. Um, I want to ask you, and suicide in the past, Guyana was up there when it comes to suicide, and it relaxed a little bit. And now I see that more young people are choosing to take their own life. What's at your end? What are you seeing?
You're referring to here in Canada, here where
No,
I
no,
live,
no, no. In Guyana, from what
or
you
my
see,
lens in Ghana
from
there.
your
Yes, for
yes,
sure. So I mean, well, no different, right? I mean, we are seeing and folks are seeing, that very young folks, are taking their own lives, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking in different ways. But one thing I can tell you for sure is, and I hope nobody take this personally because that's
right,
not
right.
what we're only having conversation here. Guyana, keep in mind, they don't have the resources like we have here. I work in mental health, I work in grief, right? So I get to see, the resources that are being offered to people when they when they are going through, any sort of grief, and whether that be suicide or otherwise, the resource is just there. Whereas in Guyana now, it's hard to do preventative stuff because the resources are not there. Like here we have, for example, 24-hour service where people can just pick up that phone and call, and it's all for free if things are not going so well. It's all confidential stuff. It's all very it's different that way. But along that line, the one thing I want to mention just before I forget, because we do have limited amount of time here this evening, there are many reasons why people are taking their own lives. And I know in the professional world, we don't use that term, people taking their own life. We use die by suicide and all of that. And all of this. But the reality is people taking their own lives. The thing is we have to keep in mind is that we have a lot of bullying happening as well too, right? So even though we may see people are taking their own lives, it's easy for us to guess and say, oh my goodness, they should have reached out to us, they should have, do this and do that. When people are in that state of mind, because keep in mind, that nobody in their right mind, when I say right mind, meaning that, they're not at that best state in terms of thinking and making, wise decision and so forth. Nobody in their right mind will, just take their own lives. So things happen, because they're whether, they're probably in a deep depression, all of these types of things. I also want to say that when these things happen, we have to be mindful as well that, how we respond. Because it is easy for us to say, oh my goodness, why do they do this and all of that, and things of that nature. But we also keep in mind that we have to, pause a little bit, try to figure out, understand the situation a lot more. So for example, let's say somebody is having some sort of mental health challenges. We also know that some people are on medication. Right? So they're on medication to treat whatever diagnosis they have and whatnot. And you know better than this as well too, Ken. And you want to talk to your doctor about this, by the way, but this is what the result is showing. A lot of the times, these medication, they do have side effects.
Correct.
Meaning that even though, let's say you're going through some depression, because there's no such thing like quick fix, but a lot of times people want quick fix, so they will go on medication. Doctors will still, recommend therapy and all of that. But a lot of people will want that quick thing. But I can tell you one thing for sure. The medication does not necessarily work, on everybody. There's always that side effect and so forth. And there's usually thought of suicide. I hear it all the time from clients. And in fact, one of my brothers died by suicide, right? But I didn't have the knowledge then. And as I put pieces together now, that incident took place with him when he was on medication.
Wow.
Right? But we didn't know, I didn't have the knowledge. This is, I'm talking about a few decades ago, right? And so, but it's worth talking about, it's worth, connecting the dots and so forth. But honestly, I'm so glad. And even though it's it's a short time we're going to have here today, it is worth us having the conversation because these folks have their whole life ahead of them.
Of course.
Right. And then when you see these guys, folks, commit suicide, and it's like one day after the next, and it's like one after the next. Right. And it's heartbreaking because even though we live here, and even though we have a better life in that sense, we are connected, our hearts are there. And I think that's one of the reasons why you want to do, you want to do this interview in the first place. But I mean, it's that comes down to that resources. And obviously the culture is very different as well too. As you would know, what is accepted here is not accepted in Guyana. So for example, here in Canada, I don't smoke and use drugs or anything of that sort, but here in Canada, marijuana is legal. Anybody can go to the shop and they can kind of purchase it, and like there's no discrimination if that's a choice people make, all of that. Guyana is different, right? The culture is different. If people use marijuana, automatically people think bad of them and all of that, right? Or they think the lowest of them, and it can bother people too, But that's my little take on it. It's very heartbreaking, but we have a role to play, and not that we don't have life on our own. We have our life too. We have our own challenges at different times. We have like lots happening as well too. But we also have a responsibility, in a sense that if we recognize that, somebody, needs some sort of help, or, if somebody reach out to us and so forth, I think it's important for us to pay attention. And sometimes people are not looking for a lot, sometimes they're just looking for somebody just to share, what they're going through at that moment. And just by us listening to what they're saying, because keep in mind, listening does not mean agreeing, right? So giving people that opportunity just to just empty out themselves is usually, a good start in terms of helping somebody if they're not going through, the best time in their life for sure. Because when it comes to the point that people are taking their own lives, it means that they're not seeing any other option. And
Right, right.
unfortunately, for them, that is the best option, right? But obviously, it leaves a lot of a lot of work behind, because the people them who are close, to them and all of that really have to deal with all the extra grief and all of that, and the trauma and all of that. And those are the kind of work we do. So
Right, right.
that's my response to what you have said. Thanks for kind of leaving it open.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do, to leave it things open, because I wasn't too prepared for this today here, and I give you a short notice too. So thank you. Now let me ask you something. In your opinion, right? What are some of the reasons, right, that people would want to kill themselves or take their life, especially young people who have their whole life ahead of them? In my opinion, when you're young, you have no problems. Your parents work, they take care of you. But when you become an adult now, you are shouldering a lot of responsibility. So, what would make a young man or woman want to take their own life? And I want to say, too, what I've
Mhm.
observed
Mhm.
from listening to the news in Ghana. I do pay attention to what's going on when it comes to suicide, is that our Indo Guyanese are killing themselves. Not, I haven't hear anything of recent where an Afro Guyanese is killing themselves. Talk to me about things that I know that you becoming a doctor, you had to study a lot of things. What's your take?
Yeah, so I think we have to do more studies. Before I answer that, if there's an opportunity for you to click on that view option again, will be good, because we're not side by side. We're still doing great job with the interview, but
Right.
people are only seeing us individually. But don't stress it about it. But
All right.
anyways, I think we need to do some more study to find out that, the demographic piece and so forth, because culture plays a key point. But believe it or not, study also shows that being a teenager, is one of the most difficult times, you know, um, for those teenagers. You're going through changes, hormone changes, all of
Right.
these types of things, and so it's extremely difficult. But it comes, and I work with a lot of teens. Coincidentally, I work with a lot of teens, and a lot of teens. And not no discrimination here, but this is what I'm seeing and hearing every day,
Right. Right.
kind
Right.
of thing. I mean, most of them, they don't have that motivation. They have everything, they have a home, they have, access to all the resources and everything. They don't have that motivation to kind of get out of bed, all of these types of thing. Relationship is a big thing as well, to breakups and all of that. Those are the times when people try to, in many cases, engage in all of these types of pieces. Um, and not feel, a lot of times teenagers, young people, they want to feel loved.
Right. Right.
they want to feel loved, and that's one of the reasons it is so important for us to. And don't know how to say it in a better way, but it's so important for us to kind of, somehow manage those pieces from home, where the young people are kind of loving themselves, the things that we talked about previously, not, comparing themselves with other people, not comparing themselves with cousins and different people, each individual their own individual self, right? So as soon as we try to push and pressure them, to do what the other person's doing, or becoming a doctor or lawyer, like these are all normal things. And believe it or not, here where I live, every month, and that's not that. This is what I know. So this is not even the stats. The stats is even higher. Every month where I live, the university close to where I live, every month a student is taking their own life there,
Oh, wow.
right? Because of pressure, right? And that's a whole different kind of volume. But I am, And when parents or caretakers also, so not only parents, whoever is in charge, for the child, if they don't have the knowledge how to, not necessarily monitor, but to kind of support a child, it can be extremely difficult because a teenager wouldn't have the knowledge like we have, right? And so their way of speaking would be very different. As you would know, teenager, the way they speak as if they know it all, they do everything.
Yeah, right, right.
Right, they kind of resist the things. They live in a digital world and so forth. And if we don't have those kinds of knowledge to kind of kind of meet them where they're at, kind of thing, that can be a problem, right? Problem in the household, problem where there's no communication, and if there's no love at home, right? And there's no perfect home, by the way. And let's say there's no like proper love at home. They seek love elsewhere. When that doesn't work out, they don't feel love anymore, right? And then that's whole apart from their everyday regular stress, it leads to that deep depression. And once they get into that deep depression, not that it is not curable, it is curable, but it is also that stigma when it comes to counseling and treatment and so forth, as you would know.
Right.
A lot of parents, I have, in fact, I have folks coming to me and parents are not aware. Because the generation of the parents, they don't believe in those types of things, and whatnot. So it can be extremely hard. And sometimes I'm pinching myself too, because I grew up in a very nice household. I'm very much connected in the community. I have everything at my fingertips and so forth.
Right, right.
But you'll be amazed to know that the kind of situation people live in, like right now as we speak, and I collect data for those things. Right now in my region here, you have people who don't have a place to sleep. They will be
Right.
sleeping on the street, right? And so people are questioning themselves. So do I choose to live under this circumstances, or do I take my own life? And I'm talking a lot of young people are involved in this as well too. And this is here,
Absolutely.
but to the Guyana piece as well too. I mean, the suicide rate is extremely high, and it really starts at the end of the day. We are kind of responsible for our own life, our own choices, and so forth. But the government also play an important role
I'm glad you say this.
right, because keep in mind, the government, they're running the country, and so they have to make sure that they are keeping an eye on things like mental health and and all the killings that happening and so forth. It's not about this is just an example. Like I have close connection there in Ghana, but I'm just kind of trying to respond to what we're talking here. But what happened, like mental health is like kind of like shoved through the rug, so to speak. So nobody really give it like the forefront attention that it needs, and so forth. But people need the support right from the get-go, right from the beginning. One of the things that Guyana do that I never support, and like for example, when they have exam results and so forth, you have ministers, they're presenting results openly to the handful of people that are shining and
Right,
doing
right,
well.
right.
What message are they sending to the people who are giving it their best shot, but
Right,
cannot
right.
have the 20 subject, cannot have the 21 subject? What are they saying? That they're not worth it? So I think they themselves have to look into the mirror and say, look, this is not the kind of approach here. As you would know, I'm assuming in the States is the same thing. Here in Canada, it does not matter if you have first place or 21st
Second,
place.
right,
It's
right, right,
irrelevant. Everybody can have an A, and
right,
it does not matter. Everybody can have a B, and it does not matter, right? And
right.
so all those little things adds up. I know of a child actually in Guyana, about 12 years old, something along that line. He was promised by his parents that if he passed his common entrance, they may have, I believe they have a different term now, but if he passed that examination to get the opportunity to go to high school, they will buy him a bicycle.
Wow.
That child did not pass
Oh,
that thing, and he ended up taking his own life.
oh,
So I think
wow.
all of these things, so we have to be mindful of, right? I mean, ideally, when we have kids, I have 3 girls, I have 3 kids, I will want the best for them and so forth, right? That's just a
Absolutely.
normal thing, but we have to be very mindful. I always say to my daughter that don't worry about me in terms of, because I am academically strong, but I remind her, don't worry about me, like focus on one thing and do the best you can, and that's all that matters, right? So the support is key. And some laws has to be put in place too, and laws has to be followed too. Like, I mean, when I went back to Guyana, I was shocked because we don't have these things happening here. There was a police officer in the restaurant there, and then there was a 12-year-old, 12, 13-year-old was drinking a beer right in that restaurant, and it was like a normal thing. I didn't get it. I didn't
Right, right,
understand it,
right, right.
right? Stuff like that. So I think that, all of that needs to be changed. And I'm speaking along this line because I'm a big picture individual. It's not about putting a band-aid, when something happens, really, because when somebody's dead now, right? Then yes, we still need to support the family and so forth. But the question is, what is it that, we need to do to kind of really prevent that from happening, right? And so that's one of the reasons I've kind of touched on a variety of different things.
Right, right.
Yeah.
One of the thing too I see is that Lord, I'm not I have to be very careful how I say this too, because in North America it's more acceptable for the gays and lesbians. In Guyana now, I mean, more people coming out, but are they ready really to accept these young people who are coming out, or even older people who are who choosing or who are gays and lesbian? So it has to be very difficult for these young people too. It's a problem, right?
It is a problem. It is a huge problem for sure. And that's, again, it has to do with the culture. Um, because those are not like, ongoing conversation that we'll have in the school system and things of such. And so it becomes a problem for sure, because as you can see, we have seen situation where people took their own lives because of those similar situations that you just kind of mentioned,
Absolutely.
for sure.
And so as a parent, what do you do, or what are I'm going to ask you two questions and you can run with it, because I know time is coming up short when you have to leave. Now, as a parent, what do we look for in someone who has suicidal tendencies? And how do we help them, these children? Back in the days in Ghana, I remember when you tell your parents, "Oh, I feel like killing myself," they want to bring the cup, the poison, give you to drink, right? Now, what sign are you looking for, and how do we help our child or children who come to us and say, "Listen, I don't feel like living. I feel like end it all. Talk to me."
Yeah. So when a child, and these things, it does happen, I can tell you that for sure. So in a therapy session, a treatment session, these things happen, these things come to play. So basically, when people say things like that, whether that be a young person or otherwise, basically they're saying in a different way that they need help and they need support. That's all they're saying, right? But they're saying it in a different way because they're not seeing hope. They're not seeing that there's a way forward. They're not realizing that that the feelings, wouldn't last forever. And I want to say this very clearly. Whoever's watching right now, and to those who will be watching at some point,
Right, right,
if you're feeling that way, you're feeling, that loneliness, that emptiness, you feel isolated, you do not want to get out there and so forth. Do know that the feelings is temporary, right? So you just
right,
have to hang on there really, really tight. In
right,
terms of as a parent, and it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult. You want to do a lot of listening, really. And keep in mind, listening does not mean that you are agreeing, right? But sometimes it's just important, just to kind of listen and give the opportunity to the child to just to speak, and don't shut them off, kind of thing.
right, right, right,
And you will know your child and children more than anybody else, right? And so monitoring is important. So when you say monitoring, you don't want to track like every details per se. But I mean, well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if you recognize a huge change in your child, you realize that, look, they don't want to, hang out with their cousins anymore. They don't want to go with you to the mall, to shopping anymore. They're just comfortable and, in their little space, or usually in their bedroom, so to speak.
right,
That's a good sign that they're not going through the best time in their life, and not necessarily a thought of suicide or anything of that sort. It's just that the motivation is not there anymore. And it could be simple things. It could be even like a lot of people struggle with their schoolwork and stuff, like academically, because schoolwork and so forth is a very stressful thing for young people. I want you to know this, right? It's if you don't have a passion, for schoolwork and so forth, it becomes a chore and things of that sort, right? And if you have parents who are not academically strong, and you're not able to kind of be present to kind of help and assist, that can become a problem too, right? Stuff of that sort. So recognizing the sign, the change of their behavior. Obviously, people are entitled for a bad day.
Of
So,
course.
so maybe just the communication wasn't the best at certain point, but if you find that it continues on, it's a really good time for a conversation for sure. And us as parents, we have to be very vulnerable because we do not know it all. We are from a different generation as well too, and so we have to really create space. And I'm not saying that it's easy. We have to create space where the children can somehow find a way to kind of open up and kind of
A
speak.
safe space.
Yeah, good idea. Safe space, knowing that we are here to not to judge, because we as human beings, especially as parents and Guyanese and West Indian parents, we have that tendency to kind of say, no, can't do it. That's not, how we were brought up. And, like it's not uncommon for us to respond that way. We really have to take a step back, and we really have to create a safe space, right, for that kind of conversation. And that can be just a starting point for what's happening, right? Because these things, it's very, very common. It's happening, and we live in tough times, Ken. I want you to know that, like right
Yeah, yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is tough time, and I think if people pay attention globally, we really live in tough times, and I think we really have to be mindful of all of those things. And like once we are alert, it will definitely make a huge difference for sure. Like that, I can tell you.
Thank you. And one of the things I think that we have to be very mindful of the stigma of mental illness. Because I don't know if you remember when we were growing up back home, and somebody is mentally ill, we used to tease these people and trouble them. Trouble them, and
Hmm.
call them names and all these kind of things. And now you grew up and you said, "Oh my God, this is not something that really we should have done." So, in terms of the stigma in Guyana, um, how can we deal with that?
Oh, wow. So study shows, and I'll be blunt and frank and plain with you
Go
here. So
ahead.
study shows that these kind of changes will take 7 generations
Oh wow.
to before we actually see changes. So assuming we start now, like you and
Yeah.
I will never get to see the change.
True.
But that is a big problem. And I can remember doing things like that growing up in Guyana, because you don't know any different. And for us it was like fun in that sense and things of that kind, right?
Hmm.
And I have a nephew who actually he doesn't speak like clearly, and he doesn't hear very well and things of that sort. And he lives in the States. And I have to tell you, with the support and all of those kind of things, he is married and he has two
Oh
beautiful
wow.
children,
Oh nice.
and live a normal life kind of thing. And I have to say, the thing that really amazed me so much is that the wife, like I have to tell you, like I really admire her, right? She marry him, and they live a nice life together, have kids and so forth. Having said that, though, I can almost certain that if he was in Guyana, he would have been walking in the street back and forth. People would have not pay attention to him. He would have not given the same respect like he is in the States and things of that sort. These things that still happen. It's here, by the way, I want you to know that here in Canada, EDI is something we take seriously, we put into practice. I know in the States, by the looks of it, your government is shifting away from EDI. And so EDI, I think people are mistaken this, and this is my area of expertise, by the way.
Right, right.
EDI is not about the color of our skin and white people against people of color, and white people against Spanish and all of that, right? And when people don't know, it's a problem. And so EDI, really includes, people who do things differently, people who learn differently. You know what I mean? It has to do with our age as well too. So that way, let's say there's an opening for a position, you want to consider the mature people as well too, even though they're close for, for retirement. You want to consider a new graduate as well too, who have the academic piece but not necessarily the hands-on experience and so forth. So that's what the EDI is all about. The EDI is not, what the media is kind of showing us. That's leave that for a whole different time. But the stigma in terms of being different, when you are different, actually when you're different as a society as a whole, that is a problem. Even the
Right,
skin
right.
color in Guyana. Like
Yeah.
I'm from the darker side. My wife is on, is on the lighter side. But
Right,
me
right.
growing up in Guyana, People have a lot of respect for me, don't get me wrong, but growing up as a child, me being on the darker side and so forth, I was teased here and there,
Oh, really?
but you don't think of that. It in a sense, not that it was not as a norm per se, but it was not uncommon for people to treat a little bit different when you are different, especially with the color thing, and not color against, like white against Indians and so forth. Even within our own, Indian people, if you're, for whatever the reason is, if you're a little bit lighter, people treat you differently. If you're darker, people tend to kind of, think. People may have changed over the years, I'm assuming. But all of these things happen and makes it worse if you are from a minority group, if you are, person who do things differently. When I say do differently, like I don't like using word disability per se because we
Right.
change the language, but people learn things differently, right? And so forth, and that can be extremely hard. A lot of people, there's a reason here people do well regardless of what way they learn. Like a lot of people will get the accommodation, right? So for example, in Guyana, they will, I don't know if they have the accommodation system there, but you're given 2 hours, you do a test, everybody's given that same time period to do that thing. And that is a problem because that's not incorporating EDI and equity into that process. Here now in Canada, for example, if they realize that a child is a bit slow, but they can get to that point, then they will be accommodated for, whatever time they need, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're not going to put a child's life on hold because they can't compete with you and I,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're holding back their whole career, right? So I'm just going to give you an example. So all of these things, it does happen in Guyana. Guyana has developed over the years and so forth, but Guyana is far away when it comes to things like mental health and grief and suicide and, and all the things that we kind of see. The way I see it, and I know some people will disagree, and that's okay. We can disagree in a professional way. When you see, and this is a little bit off here, but it's all related. And so when you see, let's say, shooting is happening because somebody needs something to eat and food and so forth. The government has a role to play. Like government has to make sure that everybody's being fed in some little shape or form. Here in Canada, for example, the government is make sure that everybody has something to eat. Everybody, right? Can you imagine if the government take away the whole welfare system? Can you imagine the shooting and
Right.
killing and
Right.
everything that people
Absolutely.
will do? So people not understanding. So people might say like they're lazy, they don't want to go to work. That's not the point. The point is like if the government don't give them some breadcrumbs to keep going, so to speak, right? Then they're gonna go, go and tell somebody to have that meal to eat and so forth because people have to live, they have to survive. That's one reason the government needs to offer more to those folks and more programs so that once they invest in them, those people, right, can go and function in society and pay their taxes and really contribute their talent, but they don't have those kind of system there. Here they have that system that everybody, work or not working, you have some money coming in. And so again, like I said, some people see it to be lazy, but that's not the point. The point is everybody has that right to live, right?
Absolutely.
And the government has an obligation to make sure that they're doing their piece. They're not going to bring everything and hand it to you, but at least something, so you can kind of get going until you're back on your feet. And so Guyana, they're still, people view it differently. So for example, and it was so heartbroken for me to see that there was a killing happen with a young gentleman, 18 years old. He stole a few items
Oh,
and they killed the fella. And people, when I read that comment, I could not believe it. I honestly couldn't believe it. Like everybody saying, oh, yes, good for him, he doesn't deserve to live and so forth. That is a problem because so do you kill somebody because they steal a loaf of bread? Or do you
right.
kind of see, like what opportunity can you provide to this individual so that they can become a champion and start to give away, free stuff and do
Yeah.
stuff in the community. So the mentality in Ghana is very different. And if you and I try to make a comment and so forth, then that's also become a problem because we are seeing it from different lens. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Absolutely. Um, what time you have to come off? It's now
Yeah,
five
so
past.
I'll go a couple minutes more. I'm very so I'm good. My show started at 6, but I'm really good in what I do, as you
All
know.
right. Good.
So I
Good.
will be able to kind of think it's not an
So
issue.
I'm gonna ask you one question, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna pause,
Hmm.
and and after I finish the hello to some people,
Hmm.
I'm gonna let you answer me. Now, Narine, there is a lot of bashing going on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with this kind of negativity on Facebook that could affect our lives so much? Think about your answer. We talking about we shift a little bit just now because we are talking about teenager
Mm-hmm.
and suicide in
Mm-hmm.
Guyana, especially. Leela Harprasad, a very good evening to you. Desiree Piera, good evening. Michael Nalini Naidu, good evening to you. Destiny Narcissus, good evening to you. Raymond Rabindranath, a very good evening to you. Vishnu Ramdat, good evening. Akash Prasad, a very good evening to you. Yes, we were talking about um, teen and suicide. Jack Prasad, a very good evening to you. Surin Singh, good evening to you. Manroop, a very good evening to you. Dore Prasad, good evening to you. Um, James Home, good evening to you. Shahid Baksh, good evening. Karen Johnson, good evening to you. Kavita Singh, good evening to you. Ayub Khan, good evening to you. Yes, and before you answer to, I hope that by as soon as my show is done, I want to bring some folks in. Now that we have Zoom, I could bring on more people on the program. So I would want to bring on some folks in next month sometimes and bring you on to Narine that so that we all could talk about things. Let's trash this out. You could bring in your part. We could hear from Guyana what's going on when it comes to suicide prevention, especially when it comes to teen. So let's talk a little bit more about what's going on Facebook. It's getting worse. People bashing each other, name calling is going on. It's tough to deal with these kind of things.
Yeah. It's very tough to deal with it, but that's a sign that people are going through very difficult times, by the way. That I can
Okay.
tell you. I'm not justifying for that. It's first of all, the people who are doing the bashing, or if people feel the need to just go there and do whatever they want and whenever, however they want and so forth, that is a problem. And I think we have to be mindful that we are not tolerating these things, right? So, for example, you are not obligated to report to me for anything. And so forth, right? So we
Right,
have
right.
to be mindful that who are the real Facebook doctors and lawyers and so forth. I
Right,
think
right, right.
that's a
And
problem.
police, and police.
Police, police as well too. And so I leave for me. So what I have done most recently, it is so important, and it took me several years to actually get it. I always put myself first,
Right,
right?
right,
And so I never put in, for years and decades, I've always put other people first. But I came to the realization that I have to put myself first, because at the end of the day, I cannot feed off an empty bucket. And if I find that, because things change with people, circumstances change, and that's okay. If I realize that, if, having somebody in my circle is not really doing me any good, is doing me more harm than
harm.
good. I have no problem kind of stepping back, tighten my circle a little
Right,
bit and things of that sort. I've kind of done, because I have to, think of my own mental health and my own professional piece as well too. And so for me, we have to think before we respond. A lot of the times, and I've experienced it, so many times, for some reason, people take things personally as well too. And so, and some people, they just look at things from a very negative lens. So you can put the most positive quote on there, and for some reason, you have one or two people who twist it and turn it into something totally different, and that can be a problem. Because if I'm putting a post, for example, on my and it happened. Let's say I'm putting a little quotation, on my page and so forth. That is my space. I kind of do that.
right, right,
You want to like, comment, you want to do that. Do it in a constructive way. But once you try to twist it into something else and so forth, I usually question the person. So I'm not putting any bad thing on there. If I realize the person is way off, I usually say to them right away. I say, when you have a chance, can you take back a look at that post? Because it has no relationship to what you're saying. So
right,
sometimes
right,
you have to kind of advocate as well too, right? And one of the things that happening, let's say somebody come and they're talking, bad things about somebody, right? Like my friend or whatever and so forth, right? The very first thing you want to do, well, as soon as you have an opportunity, to kind of shift that conversation, that's going to be a really good thing, because the thing is, um, if you are having, let's say, you having, let's say you and I have a really good relationship, and somebody's, talking about you, or somebody's going to you and talk about me and so forth. We have to be mindful that, we are not engaging in these kinds of negative pieces and so forth. So we, at the end of the day, we have a responsibility. And one of the things people are doing, and I never get it, like people share these things, like they share it constantly, like anything, you put something valid on there,
They don't
something
share it.
sensible, something related to mental health that can change somebody's life, people wouldn't care. And that's people's choice. But you write something up about something about somebody and their life is falling apart and so forth, people are all over it, right? Because that's that's what sells, But a person like me, like as you would know, if people to the people who usually follow me will know that I don't buy into those kinds of things. So I mean, at the end of the day, we have to, take that stand and don't, because that's a total bully. It's a bullying. It happens all the time. Like there is no, and people actually can go jail for these things. If
Absolutely.
people file a complaint, this is serious stuff. So like I cannot all of a sudden post something about you and say, you are this and you are that and all of these types of things, and then plaster right there. Like, who am I really to kind of start to do those things? Unless
Mhm.
if you invite me to be part of something, I can intervene in a different way. But as soon as people start to do all of these things and all the name calling that I see there, I'm not getting it.
Right, right.
Because my values is very, very different, right? And if people cannot see it to be a problem, that is a problem, unfortunately.
Yes, yes. So I think we are doing good. It's five to
Mhm.
6, and you have to get on your radio show at
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
So yeah, I'm gonna kind of go now though, but I want you to know that I hope, by the way, that it was a fruitful conversation. We will
Absolutely.
plan obviously differently off camera, and we'll kind of hammer out these important pieces because it is so important for us to hammer it out nicely and accordingly, for sure.
We have a lot of things to talk about,
Definitely.
Dr. Sookram. We got a
Mhm,
lot of things to talk
mhm,
about.
mhm.
So I want to say thank you very much for making the time to come on the radio. I know your show starts at 6 o'clock, and thanks for your love and your support, and continue doing the great work that you do. All right. To our viewers, I want to say thank you
All
all.
right. Absolutely.
I could probably let you go, and then I'll say hello
For
um,
sure. Yeah,
to
for
our
sure. You
view.
can
Right?
say continue on and talk to
Yes,
your
I could
audience, but
continue a minute.
yeah, yeah, you can continue on, and but I'll be leaving just so that I can switch and get set up. But
Right.
continue on was a pleasure, and thanks to the audience and viewers. Continue to share the page as well too.
Yes, thank you very much,
Okay.
Narine. That
Bye bye.
yes. All right, Bibi Badrul Badora. A very good evening to you. Thank you very much, Vedo Ramdhan. Good evening to you, David Sobrine. Good evening. Today we are talking a little bit about we were talking a little bit about teen and suicide and suicide prevention in Ghana. Because you know what, recently I've noticed that I'm watching the trend of suicide in Ghana, and I find that a lot of people, a lot of young men and women, killing themselves. They're choosing to commit suicide, which is not a great thing. I always believe that in life, life is a blessing, right? And you should live your blessing. But then people ask the question sometimes, what happened to people? They're crazy. And mental illness is a real thing. We need to really address mental illness, especially in Guyana. And we have to be very careful what we subscribe to, what we listen to, because you know what? If you just listen to poison, it will poison our whole system. So that's why and the good thing is that Dr. Narayan, that he is what specialize in these things. So only yesterday I asked him to come on the show with me. So neither of us really was prepared to talk about this, but thank God that we pull it off, which is a good thing. And so over the couple months after my show, our International Women's Day show, I will bring up a lot of important subject to talk about. We'll talk about some bullying on Facebook, how we deal with them, domestic violence, suicide prevention, and so many people are killing their partner, like the guy who killed his wife. So we need to address these things. We need to talk about stigmas. Um, Ivan Pisada, very good evening to you. Shanti, good evening to you. Wati Budram, a very good evening to you. Ramesh Kalitaran, a very good evening to you. Thank you. My sister Anita Ishdaulatram is watching from Canada. Tina, Born to Shine, very good evening to you. Thank you very much. And David, so Brian, we were talking about, like I said, we didn't get to talk everything that we wanted to talk about. Suicide, especially in young people in Guyana. But definitely in next month, I will be bringing some folks in from Guyana, some of the people who know exactly what's going on to talk about what's going on really in Ghana. Sunita, a very good evening to you. Savitri, a good evening to you. Leela Jairam, good evening to you. And Annie Mahadev, good evening to you. Shanta Singh, good evening to you too. So, Deborah London, good evening to you. Bibi Safdar, good evening to you. Nadu Singh, good evening to you. And Sandra Budu, good evening to you. And I know, Michael Nalini Naidu, you don't like to hear about that. But I tell you, since I've been advertising, since I was sharing who die and who get in an accident and so on, I'm kind of so surprised to have learned so many people dying out and so many young people. So don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, purchase your ticket for our International Women's Day Award and Dinner on March the 9th at Liberty Palace right here in Queens. Call me or Radhika or Shanta for your tickets. All right, they're $65, and we have a great lineup of women. All right, and so don't forget, tune in tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time From Our Hearts with Radhika and Ken on Island Zone Radio. Until then, have a great evening, everyone. Until tomorrow, have a great night.